Okay. Good morning and welcome. I'm Laura Newton. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you to keep your masks on inside and to silence your cell phones. And because we're live streaming, please don't stream the event yourselves on your phone here or surf, because we need all the bandwidth we can get to make sure that the live stream is full-bodied. Also, the family would like to thank all the friends and family who helped with Lynn's care in her last several months, including Heidi, Nancy, Mary Sue, Peggy, Corinne, Barry, Gary, Linda H., Linda S., Anne, Tandy, Jan, Kenny, Roseanne, Gretchen, Susan, and Laura. Thanks to all of you. Like many of you, my life has been stitched together with Lynn and Anthony's for most of my adulthood. In 1987, I officiated at Lynn and Anthony's wedding celebration, one of the greatest days ever. In 1988, I took my husband, Terry, when we just started dating, to meet them because I'd promised them that I would never date anybody they didn't like. Fortunately, they did. A month later and 33 years ago, I coached Lynn through her labor with Carrie. And in all the intervening years, there were weekends at the beach, life celebrations, and passages. 2 weeks before Lynn died, when she couldn't speak very clearly anymore, she directed me to sit with her in front of her eyesight computer to watch a TED Talk about how the language we speak shapes the way we apprehend the world. She was fascinated by how an Aboriginal people in New Zealand negotiate the world without the concept of left and right, but rather through cardinal directions. It was a quintessential Lynn Kittle moment. I'm sure many of you have had those, where she maintained that fierce intellectual curiosity and the burning desire to share it with each of us throughout her life. 2 weeks later, with Anthony sitting close by, Heidi and I bathed Lynn's body, dressed her in a sarong Lynn had made and her daughters had chosen to be her final garment. And now today, I'm here to welcome you to this memorial gathering for a most remarkable human being, Lynn Kittle, and to remember her with you. Lynn was a generous friend and mentor to people from around the world, including grad students from Russia, China, and Iran. Friends and family are with us today via live feed from the west coast of the US, Italy, England, Australia, and probably a multitude of places I haven't heard about yet. But Lynn lived here amongst us, a vital and driving force in our community and in all of our lives. This morning, you'll hear from people representing some of the myriad facets of Lynn's rich life: family, friendship, books, science, social justice and daughters, marriage, and, wait for it, songwriting.
Hello, my name is Liz Tresca Pomeroy, and I grew up in Palmetto, Florida, Lynn's hometown. Lynn was 4 months older than me, and I first met her in the nursery of the Palmetto Methodist Church, which both our parents attended. From there, we went to preschool, elementary, and junior high school together. Lynn moved to Sarasota, Florida at the beginning of the 10th grade, but we still saw each other on weekends and in the summer. Unfortunately, in our mid-20s, we lost touch. We reconnected on Facebook, and 4 years ago, she and Anthony helped us plan our trip to Italy. My husband and I visited her twice after that. I was delighted to find her so happy, surrounded by a loving family and friends despite ALS. Childhood friends are special. They become part of your DNA. You know each other intimately without words. When I saw Lynn in person, the years fell away. I hoped for many more visits, but COVID and ALS got in the way. We had fun growing up, whether it was eating pumpkin pie as we walked between houses, riding bikes, or playing with the gang of kids in the neighborhood. Some of the many memories I have are trips to St. Pete with her Uncle Don, and our time at Uncle Frank's beach house in Anna Maria, which became a destination once we could drive. Lynn moved to Sarasota the summer of 1968. The world was exploding with change, and we both changed with it. Because it was long distance to Sarasota, we wrote each other's letters exploring the meaning of life. Lynn's family moved again in 1970, this time to Tallahassee. We saw each other often, but I no longer knew the intimate details of her life, other than her father's tragic death 1 year later. I am proud to have known Lynn. The world feels lonelier knowing she is no longer with us.
I'm Mary Sue McCarthy. I'm Anthony's sister and the loving aunt of my nieces. We all got to love Lynn and learn about her in different ways. And one of the ways I learned about Lynn is when I was visiting, she was really into watching Stephen Colbert. And if you all watch, you know he asks celebrities 15 questions. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun if some night with the family we did the 15 questions? And because it was sometimes difficult to understand her, especially when she was tired, I said, I'll go ahead and ask you the 15 questions and write down the answers. And then when we play with the family, I'll have your answers if you don't have the energy to answer them. And she said, okay. So we never got to play with the family, but I kept the 15 questions and answers. So, Lynn, what is your best sandwich? And Lynn said, grilled cheese, tomato, mayo, and mustard. What is the one thing you own you should throw out? And she said, my body. Really, there's so much, she said. And I said, apples or oranges? And native Floridian Lynn said, apples. Scientist Lynn, what happens when we die? She said, our energy is redistributed in the universe. See the first law of thermodynamics. And what's your favorite action movie, Lynn? The original Star Wars. What's your favorite smell? Frangipani. What's your least favorite smell? Spoiled tofu. Okay, Lynn, is exercise worth it? An emphatic no. What's the most used app on your phone? I don't think anybody would be surprised to really know her that she said, the Washington Post. What song would you listen to for the rest of your life if you could? And she said, what a wonderful world. And the last question, describe the rest of your life in 5 words. And she said, sitting in this damn chair. That was our Lynn.
Hi. Whoa. My name is Jan Keshin, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Lunatics Literary Guild, a book group. We founded this book group in 1992, and we're about to have our 30-year anniversary next year. We started out with pretzels and wine at my house and quickly evolved into a full-course dinner. We always loved when we got to meet at Lynn's house because that meant Anthony would cook for us. Lynn was very clear about her opinions about the book. If she loved the book, you knew she loved it and you knew why. If she hated the book, we knew that too. Lynn became the scribe for the book group. She generously recorded all of the hundreds of books that we read, the date we met about them, what was our rating, and whose house we were at. And it became a document that we referred to over and over again over the years. What I really loved about Lynn in the group was her commitment. Lynn rarely missed a meeting. She was committed to the group, she was committed to literature, and she was committed to her glass of Pinot Grigio when she arrived. I was lucky enough to travel with Lynn. You know she was an intrepid traveler. Went to Italy in 2016, post-ALS diagnosis, and she was tired sometimes and it was hard for her, but you could tell she was having a ball. And I also was lucky enough to accompany her one weekend to Jacksonville for her visit to Mayo. my God, I'm so shaky. It was interesting because she was the darling of the department. As soon as she walked in, everybody was like, "Hi, Lynn," and she would greet them with her characteristic smile, and it was really a pleasure to see how appreciated she was there. I'm going to close with this, what Sarah Ricklick wrote to me when she heard I was doing this. Sarah's a member of the Lunatics also. "We already miss Lynn and are learning to settle for our memory of her beautiful smile as she herded us through our book rating ritual at the end of our meetings, getting us back on track for just another minute, always with a smile."
Hi, I'm Heidi Fox. I love Lynn Kittle. She was my dear friend for 50 years. I recently spent a few afternoons reading Lynn's travel journals out loud to her and reminiscing about those times with her so far away and me back home and all the things that were going on in our lives then. There's a short passage where Lynn writes about traveling and the feeling it provided her of complete oneness with the universe and abandon into what would come next. Of course, this is embedded on a page with a detailed record of what had been spent that day on food, postage, and lodging, and what was projected for the next. Her minimalist but thoroughly organized approach always reminded me of lines from a John Shardy poem. "Never stroll away from camp without a brush, a comb, a compass, and a postage stamp to mail yourself back home." Lynn and I never traveled together, but we were fellow travelers through the adventure of our entire adult life. It's hard to believe how much unfolded from love at first sight in the Godby parking lot. School, college, friendships, lovers, travels, husbands, pets, family, jobs, children, houses, weddings, funerals, illnesses, politics, community, martinis, books, puzzles, and beaches. I think our friendship provided that magic travel feeling for both of us. In addition to all the things we did together, there was just being together, and that was a precious fold in time. A safe space tucked away where there was connection and understanding, honesty, and acceptance. Lynn had a keen intelligence and the ability to engage with you completely. Her love was a remarkable gift to me, and I hope mine to her. The adventure continues as her family and mine are woven tightly together for the rest of time. I love you, Anthony, and Carrie, and Christiana, and Hallie. I will be here, as I promised Lynn Kittle I would, to love and support you in whatever way I can.
I'm Peter Fire. I am from FSU, and I am under strict instructions from Anthony to limit my remarks to an hour. I'll try, but going through the 760 pages will be difficult. So nominally, I was Lynn's boss, but only nominally. Nobody was Lynn's boss. We're collaborators, we were partners in crime. In 1994, me and Lynn were tasked with rejuvenating our graduate program in the Institute of Molecular Biophysics. My role was a very easy one. I just thought of things to improve and then let Lynn to make it happen. And happened, it did. The program which we have today was very much the program Lynn implemented 25 years ago. She left the program after 3-4 years to have Holly, but we were delighted for her to come back in 2011 after a 17 years break. This time her job was much easier. We somehow managed not to ruin the program she established, and Lynn then was left to concentrate on things which she truly loved, which was mothering our graduate students. She was a scientist, she was a graduate student, she was involved in research, therefore she was exquisitely positioned into being a scientific and academic advisor to those students. She was their counselor, including marriage counseling. She was psychiatrist. She was also a friend and a family to those students. Many of them left on our website memories of Lynn, and I would like to quote a couple of them. Dr. Travis Hahn said, Lynn was a big part of why I came to FSU. She quickly became my mother away from home. I could come to her with any problem and she would know just what to do. Or Dr. Miriam Badr said, when I think of Lynn, the first thing that comes to mind is her big, bright smile. She's definition of positivity and kindness. I remember parties at her house bringing us all together and helping us navigate stressful times. Always there. Just to emphasize that, how many of us who are administrators would have their charges name their respective firstborn children after us? Dr. Misha Kopilev and his wife were so close to Lynn that they named their daughter Jessica Lynn, and Lynn with one N, so that there is no mistake after whom they named the child. Only yesterday I received a note from a graduate student of ours who is now a professor at Emory University. He never actually overlapped with Lynn, but he was very aware that it was Lynn who created the culture of the program, and he wanted me to say how grateful he was. Well, we're all very grateful, and the only thing which I could add is that Lynn's legacy will live on. Thank you.
Hi. So my mom was very adamant that she did not want people to exclusively talk about how great she was after she died. People were allowed to talk about how great she was because she admitted that she was great, but she didn't want people to talk about her with rose-colored glasses. She was very prescriptive that way. She wanted her life and her being to be remembered with accuracy above all else. She was particular and brilliant. She repeated herself a lot, corrected grammar incessantly, let her kids wake up just a little bit slowly in the morning, was thoughtful and considered, and was also regularly irritated with much of humanity. She was intuitive and logical and direct and expected a lot from the people she loved. She expected social and political responsibility from her children and from her friends. I could speak about many aspects of my mother's life, but I'm going to spend my time today talking about those specific expectations of social responsibility. Her expectations were driven by her brilliant mind, which was able to process vast amounts of data and make non-fear-based decisions. She helped her family make all kinds of decisions using this method, regular stuff, what schools to go to, what medications to take, how to navigate social situations. She was not always soft with her words, although she definitely was sometimes, but she always made sense. When we needed to start making decisions about COVID as a family, her ability to delve deeply into ever-evolving research, compile information, and communicate those findings to make evidence-based determinations was invaluable. Some of us would lean towards optimism, others would veer towards making fear-based decisions, and she would become very irritated and attempt to correct a lot of us using very specific, real data. So there are some things she felt strongly about that I'm going to speak to today while I have this wonderfully captive audience. Unfortunately, I will likely not do it as well as Lynn Kittle would have. Please forgive me. So if you're here in person, that means that you have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 if you're over the age of 12. Well done. But that is not the end of your personal social responsibility. We have not yet reached community immunity, and it is the responsibility of each of us to have the hard conversations with people who are vaccine hesitant to convince them to get vaccinated. Whether to get vaccinated may seem like a personal choice only impacting the individual, but these decisions impact us all. Collectively, the unvaccinated population fosters an environment where vaccine-resistant variants could spread and put all of us at risk. The unvaccinated population is putting additional unnecessary strain on our fragile healthcare system and even our economy. Individually, those electing not to get vaccinated are putting those ineligible to be vaccinated at risk. These are things that matter to us all, and we all have a responsibility to public health to combat this misinformation. Please do not be complacent. Push your loved ones to get vaccinated. Talk to the friend of the friend. Push them. A cultural shift is going to be necessary for our civilization to be successful through this and other epidemics and pandemics. We have to create an environment where electing to not get vaccinated for communicable diseases is socially unacceptable. If you struggle with those conversations because you tend to have panic attacks, find innovative ways to do whatever you can to get more people vaccinated. For example, hijack your mother's funeral to talk about vaccination. It's your social responsibility. Like voting, which leads me to my other preachy point. Many of you received and perhaps relied upon Lynn's picks come election time. Her list of candidate picks went to hundreds of people. I cannot think of someone so far outside the political scene who had such a far-reaching impact on local elections. Some of you, I won't name names, have told me that you literally just voted for whoever Lynn Kittle told you to because you didn't have time and you trusted her and you knew she had done the research. Well, as you may have heard, Lynn Kittle is unfortunately now dead, and you won't be receiving Lynn Kittle's picks this year, or next election. That does not mean that you get to leave all of the judges and soil and water board seats blank or fill them in at random. Because those positions really matter to our community. So do the research yourself. Find someone new to trust. You can do it. You are smart enough. One of the most amazing outcomes of the distribution of Lynn's picks was that it would inspire people to look into candidates and have conversations. So take ownership of your social responsibility and vote down the whole ballot. In my mom's words, please vote for the most progressive candidate that can win. To be honest, I'm totally lost. I've spent my time today talking about subjects that are universal and directive and a little preachy, because the truth is I've lost my mom and my friend, a friend who had a sharp tongue and mind and guided me through things like this. And then I lost her Uncle Frank, my grandfather, on Tuesday of this week, a fascinating man who shared her wit and political prowess, and grappling with these mountainous losses feels untethering. We lost parts of my mom over the last 6 years, but her sharp tongue and ability to research and parse data stayed until nearly the end. So while I was able to grieve other pieces of her slowly, now I start the work of grieving that final loss, that holistic loss. I look at Ross and at Ben, and I think, how can I make sure to build a life for them as fascinating as the one she built for me? How can I instill in Ross a commitment to community and the world as she did in me? How can I possibly thank Ben for his commitment to our family? All he has given and sacrificed for me, for my mom, for our family through so many years of my mom's illness. How can I make sure to take them traveling? She made me promise to take Ross traveling, specifically to Australia. But to do that, we have to suppress this pandemic much more effectively. Some days I am so disheartened and so discouraged, I don't know that it could ever be possible. I worry that humanity will not step up. But if you all go out and convince someone to get vaccinated, go make sure you vote and vote well during the next elections, I'm sure it will really help me process my grief. It'll really do well by my mom's memory. Or not. But you should do it anyway, for you. Thank you.
If only Lynn believed in heaven, this would be it. You know that land. You have an image of that land. All the cold and bitter children of the cold north have an image of the warm welcome of that southern land. There, the palm and the cypress cut themselves out in antique shapes for your delight against the blue sky and the noonday sun. Those are the very shapes and patterns that are carved upon the antique heart, and you know them as your birthright. From generation to generation, they imprint their shapes upon the human heart. It is the land where the pale jasmine blossoms in the sweet night air, and bright lemons hang like dim and secret lamps amidst the glittering and the gloss of the evergreen. It is the sunny clime where you breathe more freely, both by day and by night, where your fearful lungs fill gently with the soft air, where you no longer shiver and huddle and wrap yourself into your own arms and clench yourself back into your own self. There you no longer need to dread the threshold between the body and the world, for all is mild, all flows easily, all is lightness. Your shoulders are without burden, your eyes are clear, your skin is soft, and your feet in their sandals are free. You stretch out your arms, you can see your toes. The sky is vast and blue, the sand is golden, the horizon shimmers with pledge and with promise. You know that land. But this is what Lynn knew.
You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. You want the physicist to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy so they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the physicist to remind your sobbing daughters about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy gets created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your daughters to know that all your energy, every vibration, every BTU of heat, every wave of every particle that was their beloved mother remains with them in this world. You want the physicist to tell your weeping kids and grandkids that amid the energies of the cosmos, you gave as good as you got. And at one point you'd hope that the physicist would step down from the pulpit and walk to your broken-hearted spouse there in the pew and tell him that all the photons that ever bounced off your face, all the particles whose paths were interrupted by your smile, by the touch of your hair, hundreds of trillions of particles, have raced off like children, their ways forever changed by you. And as your widower rocks in the arms of a loving family and friends, may the physicist let him know that all the photons that bounced from you were gathered in the particle detectors that are his eyes. That those photons created within him constellations of electromagnetically charged neurons whose energy will go on forever. And the physicist will remind the congregation of friends how much of all of our energy is given off as heat. There may be a few fanning themselves with their program as she says this. And she will tell them that the warmth that flowed through you in life is still here, still part of all that we are, even as we who mourn continue the heat of our own lives. And you'll want the physicist to explain to those who loved you that they need not have faith. Indeed, they should not have faith. Let them know that they can measure, that scientists have measured precisely the conservation of energy and found it accurate, verifiable, and consistent across space and time. You can hope that your family will examine the evidence and satisfy themselves that the science is sound, and that they'll be comforted to know that your energy is still around. According to the law of the conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. You're just less orderly. Amen.
My name is Anne, and I'll be reading the reflections that Anthony wrote about his Lynn, my best friend and the love of my life. I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth. That statement is as true for me as it was for Lou Gehrig, who said it after being diagnosed with ALS. I was lucky enough to spend 35 incredible years with the most wonderful, beautiful, intelligent, adventurous, committed, adaptable, precise, sexy, caring, courageous, and brave person I will ever know. Lynn was committed and impeccable. She participated in ALS research studies which had nothing to do with her treatment or welfare and which included lumbar punctures because she believed in science and wanted to contribute what she was able to better understand this devastating disease. She also raised thousands of dollars for ALS research whenever an opportunity presented itself, like when she used her 2017 interview on WCTV about ALS when Stephen Hawking died as a vehicle to fundraise because she was committed to promoting research. She was committed to political action and progressive governance. For example, she organized the Obama 2008 campaign phone banks at our home and office. And as Carrie mentioned so beautifully, many of you relied on Lynn's picks every election cycle, where she meticulously researched down-ballot races for judges, soil and water boards, ballot initiatives, and constitutional amendments to help promote progressive candidates and public policy. Lynn was an internationalist and an adventurer who traveled to places most folks will never visit, like Tonga, Fiji, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Belize, New Zealand, and 6 times to Australia, many of which she visited alone and at a very young age before we got together, not to mention her travels to many European destinations. It gave her immense pleasure to be able to secure Italian and European Union citizenship using my Italian heritage and her extraordinary research skills for herself, our children, our grandchildren, and beyond. This fit with her idea of being a citizen of the world. Lynn was welcoming and inclusive. My kids made fun of how many different people we brought into our home and lives over the years. There were the Italian, French, and Japanese exchange students. There was Marco, who moved in to teach us Italian, and Felicitas from Germany, who lived with us while doing an internship at SAS. There were the many different folks who lived in our guest house, like Massimo, who is a visiting FSU Italian professor, Olivia, Anna, and Henry. And there was Shirin from Iran, one of the last students Lynn recruited for MOB, for whom Lynn served as a loving, surrogate American mother figure. All these folks were welcomed by Lynn with open arms and became part of our extended international family. Her ALS disease had a different trajectory than that of most folks. Many die in less than 2 years with a rapid decline in function. Lynn survived almost 7 years since her onset in October of 2014. She only declined significantly in the last year and a half, with the most rapid decline occurring in her last 6 months. For 5 years, the biggest loss was the use of her right hand and arm. ALS is a disease of progressive loss of use and function. She accommodated that loss of use by becoming left-handed. Interestingly, left-handedness has always been a valued trait by her. Her mother, Nelda, was left-handed, as were Lou Gehrig, Obama, Oprah, Bill Clinton, Steve Jobs, and other successful people. She began to paint mostly birds with her left hand and successfully replicated her beautiful right-handed cursive writing with her left hand. When she lost her ability to use her left hand, she began painting with her eyes on her eye gaze computer, technology computer. An example of each of these pieces of art is on the display table. The years after her diagnosis were used for travel. We went to Ireland, to Italy 3 times, Canada twice, New England and New York City and state, among other locations, and we traveled to Tennessee to donate her great-great-grandfather's Civil War diary to the Tennessee Museum of History. She would even use our frequent trips to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville as romantic getaways, with special dinner reservations at a fine dining restaurant where she had a special table and a special server. Lynn was brave and courageous. She knew very early on that she was not going to use the life extension techniques like feeding tubes and ventilators that many ALS patients use, because she could not envision a quality of life like that. She was not afraid of dying, which does not mean that she did not have the fear of that unknown or the loss of her loved ones. But she understood that when her life no longer had the things that made it worth living and that she valued, that she would let that life go. Lynn got enormous pleasure from her family and friends, and especially from her young grandchildren, Mason and Ross. But when she could no longer use her eye gaze computer, which was her connection to the world, and when she lost the ability to speak understandably, she lost her last 2 areas of agency and control. There is no question in my mind that she willed herself to death, not only to save herself from the suffering that she experienced the last few months, but also as a final courageous gift to her loved ones who were caring for her. We spent a lot of time over the last 6 years talking to each other about death. We reflected on our lives and what our legacies would be after we were gone. For Lynn, her wonderful and amazing children who cared for her and miss her so much are a special legacy. All those of us close to her already miss her clear-headed, wise counsel and her ability to truly listen, both of which we relied on for helping us problem solve. She also considered our marriage as part of her legacy and was proud, as am I, that our children have told us that they view it as a model of a good relationship. I met Lynn through her high school friend and my dear friend Heidi Fox, who had it in her head before we met that we would make a good couple. She kept coming up with opportunities for us to get to know each other. When Lynn told her mom when we first got together that she had a serious boyfriend, her mom asked if I was smart. Lynn lied and said I was. But her mother understood that she needed a partner who could engage with her on the intellectual level that she operated on, so I did my best to keep up with her. There were other things that many of you are aware of that she considered her legacy. The School of Arts and Sciences Charter School owes some of its success to her involvement as board chair and admissions and office manager. Her contributions to the Institute for Molecular Biophysics has already been mentioned by Peter, especially her relationships with the program's graduate students and the guidance she provided them. She gave of herself to grassroots community, Lunatics Literary Society, Montessori Co-op Early School, and many others. But her most important and lasting legacy is articulated in the poem Late Fragment by Raymond Carver. And did you get what you wanted from this life even so? I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on this earth. This is why she was sent to earth, to be beloved by so many, but especially by me, by Anthony.
Clearing stands a boxer and a fighter by her trade, and she carries the reminders of every glove that's laid her down or cut her till she cried out in her anger and her pain. I am leaving, but the fighter still remains. Yeah, the years been rolling by me, they've been rocking evenly, and I am older than I once was, younger than I'll be, but that's not unusual. No, it isn't strange. After changes upon changes, we are more or less the same. After changes, we are more or less the same. Lie, 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 lie. So I'm throwing out my winter clothes, wishing I was gone, going home, where those Tallahassee winters aren't leading me, needing me, going home. Lie, 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 lie. In the clearing stands a boxer and a fighter by her trade, and she carries the reminders of every glove that's laid her down or cut her till she cried out in her anger and her pain. I am leaving, I am leaving, but the fighter still remains. Lie, lie, la 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 la
Thank you all. Go forth and get vaccinated and vote.